I was 58 years old. My knees hurt every time rain was coming, and that Thursday night the ache had settled deep under both kneecaps. But that was not what hurt most. What hurt most was sitting in my old Ford F-150 across from the Drury Inn on South Glenstone Avenue, watching my wife walk into a hotel holding hands with the man who had stood beside me at our wedding. His name was Darnell Price. 17 years earlier, Darnell had been my best man. He had stood in New Hope Baptist, wearing a rented black suit, grinning like a fool, telling everybody, Leon finally got himself a good woman. And there he was now, his hand resting on the small of my wife's back, like it belonged there. My wife Valerie had texted me 23 minutes before that, working late again. Don't wait up. I still had the message open on my phone when she stepped out of Darnell's silver Buick. At first, I just stared. You know how people say they saw red? I did not. I saw everything too clearly. The wet shine of the hotel parking lot under the yellow lights. The way Valerie pulled her blue coat tighter around her shoulders. The way Darnell leaned close and said something that made her laugh. That coat was from me. Anniversary gift. I bought it at Dillard's because she said she wanted something nice, but not too flashy. I remembered standing in line with it, feeling proud of myself for picking the right size. Funny what your mind grabs onto when your life is cracking. I had not gone looking for a fight that night. I need to say that. I had called Valerie twice around 7:30. No answer. That was not new lately. She had been working late a lot. Dental billing, she said. End-of-year insurance mess. Patients calling, claims backed up. I wanted to believe her. At our age, you do not want to start over because of a feeling in your gut. You tell yourself you are being insecure. You tell yourself maybe you are just tired. Maybe your blood pressure medicine is making you moody. Maybe your wife is just stressed, so I drove by her office. The parking lot was empty. The little dental clinic off Republic Road was dark except for the sign by the door. No cars, no lights in the back, no Valerie. I sat there for a minute with my hands on the steering wheel. My right thumb kept rubbing the worn spot where the leather had cracked. I almost went home. Then I remembered something. 2 weeks earlier, Valerie had come home smelling faintly like hotel soap. Not perfume, not sweat. That clean, sharp, little bar kind of smell. I asked her about it and she snapped, "For heaven's sake, Leon, now you're smelling me?" I apologized. That was the part that embarrassed me later. I apologized for noticing. So that night, instead of going home, I drove toward Glenstone. Not speeding, not shaking yet, just quiet. The kind of quiet that tells you your heart already knows something your mouth is not ready to say. Then I saw Darnell's Buick. I parked across the street near a closed tire shop and waited. 5 minutes later, they arrived. Valerie did not look guilty. That was the worst part. She looked comfortable, like she had walked beside him before, like there was no hurry, no fear, no second thoughts. I reached for the door handle. My knee locked when I shifted forward, and pain shot up my leg. It was enough to stop me. Maybe that pain saved me from making a fool of myself. Because what was I going to do? Limp across the street and yell in a hotel lobby? Grab Darnell by the collar like I was 35 again? Demand answers from a woman who had already answered me by being there? No. I sat back. I breathed through my nose the way my doctor told me to do when my pressure climbed. In for 4, out for 6. It did not help much, but it kept me from doing anything stupid. After they disappeared inside, I waited another few minutes. Then I got out of the truck. The night air was cold enough to sting my ears. Cars hissed by on Glenstone. Somewhere down the road, a siren wailed and faded. I walked into that hotel with my hands in my jacket pockets. The lobby smelled like coffee, floor cleaner, and chlorine from the indoor pool. A young receptionist looked up and smiled. "Evening, sir. Checking in?" "No," I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "I just need to leave something for a guest. Valerie Turner. She'll be checking out later." The receptionist hesitated, professional but polite. "I can place it aside and give it to her if she comes to the desk." "That's fine." I had stopped at a Walgreens on the way over, bought a plain white envelope and printed 2 things from the little photo kiosk, like some old man who did not know how to use his own phone. Maybe I was stalling. Maybe I needed the act of making it physical. Inside that envelope, I placed three things. A screenshot of Valerie's text. A photo I had taken from across the street of her and Darnell walking into the hotel. And one sentence written on a yellow sticky note. Come home before someone else tells you who you become. I sealed it. The receptionist took it and wrote Valerie's name on the front. Anything else? She asked. I almost said, yes, about 17 years. Instead, I shook my head. No, ma'am, thank you. Then I went home. That drive felt longer than it was. Springfield is not a big city, not really, but every red light seemed to hold me in place and make me think. By the time I pulled into our driveway, my hands were shaking so badly I had to sit there until they stopped. The house was dark except for the porch light. Valerie's empty chair sat at the dining table where she had left it that morning. Her coffee mug was still by the sink, lipstick on the rim, a spoon next to it, normal little things. That was what made it feel unreal. I made coffee I did not drink. Then I made a phone call. Not to Darnell, not to Valerie, to Monica Price, Darnell's ex-wife. I had not spoken to Monica in years, but 2 days earlier, she had called me out of nowhere. I almost did not answer because I thought it was some political volunteer, but when I picked up, she said, Leon, I know this is strange, but if Darnell is anywhere near your wife, you need to be careful. I had not wanted to hear it then. Now I did. Monica arrived at my house at 11:18 p.m., wearing jeans, a gray cardigan, and the face of a woman who had already survived the same storm. She did not hug me, did not pity me. She just walked in, set her purse on the dining table, and said, Tell me what happened. So I did. At 12:06 a.m., Valerie's car whipped into the driveway. A minute later, her key scraped at the lock. The front door opened. Valerie stepped inside, breathing hard, the envelope still crushed in her hand. Then she saw Monica sitting at our dining table. She looked at Monica, then at me. For once, my wife had no speech ready. I stood beside the table and said, I invited the only person who knows Darnell better than either of us. For several seconds, nobody spoke. The kitchen clock kept ticking. The refrigerator hummed. A pickup truck rolled past outside, its headlights briefly washing across the living room before disappearing. Valerie looked from Monica to me and back again. Her breathing slowed, but I could see her trying to figure out what I knew and what I did not. Finally, she forced out a laugh. Well, this is unexpected. Monica did not smile. I imagine it is. Valerie looked at me. Leon, what is she doing here? I pulled out one of the dining room chairs. Sit down. I'm not sitting down until somebody tells me what's going on. I nodded once. Fair enough. I reached into my shirt pocket and laid her crumpled hotel envelope on the table. You can start by telling me how your overtime shift was. The color drained from her face. For just a second. Then she recovered. It is not what you think. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny, because after all these years she had still chosen the oldest sentence in the book. I sat down across from her. I have not told you what I think. She opened her mouth, closed it. Monica quietly folded her hands. Trust me, she said. I've heard every version of this conversation. Valerie finally turned toward her. This does not concern you. No, Monica replied calmly. It concerned me 6 years ago. Silence again. I noticed Valerie still had her purse over her shoulder like she was not planning to stay. Maybe she was not. Maybe part of her still believed she could walk out and fix the story later. She looked at me. So you followed me? I drove past your office. She said nothing. It was dark. Still nothing. I found Darnell's car. Her shoulders dropped a fraction. Then she surprised me. She did not deny being there. Instead, she asked, Did you take pictures? I looked at her for a long moment. Is that really your first question? She looked away. That hurt more than I expected. Not because she had cheated, because somewhere along the way, protecting herself had become more important than caring what she had done to me. Monica leaned forward. Valerie, can I ask you something? Valerie sighed dramatically. If I say yes, are you going to leave? No. Fine. Has Darnell already started talking about investments? Valerie blinked. What? The future, Monica said. A business, a rental property, a chance to make easy money. Valerie's eyes flickered, only for half a second. But I saw it. So did Monica. Monica leaned back in her chair. There it is. I frowned. What am I missing? Monica looked at me instead of Valerie. Leon, I did not call you because I enjoy ruining marriages. I figured. I called because last Saturday I saw Darnell and your wife together near Table Rock Lake. Valerie's head snapped toward her. You were following us? No. Monica's voice stayed even. My grandson had a baseball tournament in Branson. We stopped for lunch afterward. She shrugged. I saw the two of you outside a cafe. Valerie stared. I almost ignored it, Monica continued. Then I heard Darnell say something I have heard before. What? Once she trusts me with the money, everything gets easier. The room became so quiet I could hear the dishwasher settling in the kitchen. I looked at Valerie. She looked everywhere except at me. My stomach tightened. What money? She answered too quickly. There is not any money. Monica sighed. Leon. I looked at her. Check your emergency account. I stood. Without saying another word, I walked into my little office. The desktop computer took forever to wake up. Another reminder that everything gets slower with age. Machines, bodies, people. While it loaded, I rubbed my right knee. The weather report had predicted rain by morning. They were probably right. I logged into our joint savings account. The balance stared back at me. I blinked. Logged out. Logged back in. Same number. I pulled up the transaction history. Withdrawal, transfer, withdrawal, transfer. 5 months. Small amounts, then larger ones. Never enough to make me panic. Always enough to explain away. 300, 700, 1,500, eventually over $18,000. I heard Valerie walking into the doorway behind me. It was not like that. I did not turn around. I can explain. I still did not turn. You should. She swallowed. Darnell found an investment opportunity. I closed my eyes. Not because I was angry, because I suddenly felt old. Not physically, emotionally. I had spent 35 years fixing broken air conditioners. Every problem had a reason. Bad compressor, dirty coil, leaking refrigerant. Replace the part, move on. People were not like that. People broke in ways you could not repair. I slowly faced her. Our emergency fund? It was not all of it. Our emergency fund? We were going to make it back. We. The word echoed in my head. Not I, not he. We. You and Darnell. She did not answer. You never even asked me. You would have said no. She was not wrong, which somehow made it worse. Monica stood quietly in the hallway. I told you, she said softly. He always starts with borrowed money. Valerie glared at her. You do not know him. Monica let out one tired laugh. I was married to him for 22 years. That landed. Hard. I walked back to the dining room and sat down again. My coffee had gone cold. I took a sip anyway. It tasted burnt. Valerie finally sat across from me. For the first time that night, she looked scared. Not guilty, scared. Leon, what? I can fix this. Can you? She hesitated. I'll tell Darnell we need the money back. Need, not deserve. Need. So he has it? She froze. Just for a heartbeat. That heartbeat answered my question. I rubbed my forehead. You already gave it to him, she whispered. Most of it. I nodded slowly. I was not surprised anymore. That was the strange part. The shock had already happened in the hotel parking lot. Everything after that was just confirmation. I looked at Valerie for a long time. Then I quietly said something I had never imagined saying to my wife. Tomorrow morning, I'm calling my attorney. Her eyes widened. Leon, do not do that. I'm also calling the bank. You do not understand. No. I stood. You do not understand. She followed me toward the hallway. Please. I stopped and turned around. For just a second, I saw the young woman I had met in a little coffee shop 18 years earlier. She had laughed because I spilled cream on my shirt. She handed me napkins. We talked for 3 hours. I drove home thinking maybe life was giving me another chance after losing my first wife. That memory almost broke me. Almost. Then I remembered the hotel, the text, the empty office. The, the missing money. I looked at Valerie and quietly said, I've spent months trying to save a marriage you were already spending. She started crying, real tears this time, but I could not tell whether they were for me or for herself. My phone buzzed, one text message, unknown number. I opened it. You should have retired sooner, no signature, none needed. I already knew it was Darnell. I stared at those 4 words. Then I looked up at Valerie. For the first time all night, I realized Darnell thought he had already won. I did not sleep that night. I tried. Around 1 in the morning, I stretched out on the couch because I could not stand looking at our bedroom. Valerie stayed in the guest room, without either of us suggesting it. That silence said more than another argument ever could. Every hour or so, I checked the clock on the cable box. 1:42, 3:11, 4:28. By 5:30, I gave up. I made coffee, fed the birds in the backyard like I always did, and watched a pair of cardinals fight over the feeder. Funny how nature never wastes time pretending. At 7:30, I was parked outside Andre Collins' law office near Park Central Square. Andre had handled the sale of my HVAC business 4 years earlier. He was not flashy. His office furniture looked older than both of us. The coffee tasted burnt enough to strip paint. That morning, it somehow felt comforting. His receptionist smiled. Morning, Mr. Turner. Morning, Linda. You look tired. I earned it. She gave me the kind of smile older people give each other. No questions, just understanding. A few minutes later, Andre waved me into his office. He closed the door. You sounded serious on the phone. I handed him a folder, bank statements, the hotel picture, the screenshot of Valerie's text, Darnell's message. Andre spent several minutes reading without saying much. Finally, he leaned back. I'm sorry, Leon. So am I. He tapped the bank statements. Let's separate 2 issues. I'm listening. The affair is one thing. The money is another. And the money is where we need to stay focused. That surprised me. Maybe because I still wanted to talk about betrayal instead of paperwork. Andre folded his hands. Emotion makes people make expensive decisions. I do not plan on punching anybody. I know, he smiled faintly. You've never been the punching type. That was true. Growing up, my father used to say, the loudest man in the room usually has the weakest case. I remembered that my whole life. Andre pointed toward one transfer. Did Valerie have permission to move these funds? No. Did you ever authorize her to invest your retirement savings? No. Were these joint household expenses? No. He nodded slowly. Good. I was not sure good was the word I would have chosen. He opened another folder and began making notes. First, we'll notify the bank that some transfers are disputed. Second, we'll protect your individual assets. Third, we need to understand exactly what Valerie signed. I frowned. What do you mean? You said Darnell mentioned paperwork. I nodded. Andre looked at me over his glasses. I've learned something after 32 years practicing family law. What's that? People rarely lie once. They build a whole neighborhood around the first lie. That sentence stayed with me, because Valerie had not just lied about working late. She had lied every time she came home smiling at a text she would not show me. Every unexplained withdrawal, every little story that suddenly made sense. For almost 2 hours, we went through records, checks, electronic transfers, credit card statements. Then Andre stopped. His finger rested on a scanned document. What is it? He turned the monitor toward me. There, halfway down the page, was my signature, or something that looked enough like it. I leaned closer. No. You did not sign this? I've never seen it. He zoomed in. The signature was not terrible. Whoever copied it had practiced, but it was not mine. One letter curved the wrong way. The T in Turner was too round. It looked convincing until it did not. Andre became very quiet. This document says you acknowledged an investment. I never did. I believe you. He printed the page, then another. Finally, he placed the stack in front of me. Leon, I need you to understand something. I'm trying. This could become a criminal matter. I stared at him. He continued carefully, not automatically. Forgery requires intent, and intent has to be proven. So nobody's going to jail today. No, he paused. But someone signed your name. I rubbed my face. The skin under my eyes felt heavy. At my age, you start noticing little things. Your hands do not recover from working all day. Your knees ache after climbing stairs. Your eyes need brighter light to read. Nobody tells you betrayal gets heavier too. It does not hit your heart the way it did at 30. It lands on every year you have already spent. I looked out Andre's office window toward the square. An older couple walked hand in hand, slow, comfortable. Neither seemed in a hurry. I wondered if they had ever been through something like this. Maybe everybody carries a story they never tell. Andre let me sit with my thoughts for a minute. Then he said quietly, "There's something else." I laughed without humor. "Of course there is." He slid another sheet toward me. "This investment company Darnell is using." "What about it?" "It barely exists." I frowned. "It was registered less than a year ago." "So? So far that is not unusual." He tapped another page. "But the business address is a UPS store mailbox." I blinked. "You're kidding." I wish I was. He was not. That tiny detail changed everything. Not because it proved fraud. Because it proved Darnell wanted people to believe he had something he did not. Image instead of substance. Confidence instead of credibility. Just before noon, my phone buzzed. It was Monica. "You busy?" "I'm with Andre. I found something." "What?" "Darnell's speaking Saturday." "Speaking?" "Community fundraiser. For seniors." I looked at Andre. He raised an eyebrow. Monica continued. "He's presenting some housing investment idea to retirees." I felt my stomach tighten. "You're sure?" "I called the community center. He's on the schedule." After we hung up, Andre sat back. "That changes things." "How?" "If he's asking older people for money." He did not finish. He did not have to. This was not only about my marriage anymore. If Darnell was repeating the same promises he had made to Valerie, someone else could get hurt. An image flashed into my mind. Mrs. Odessa Bell, 76 years old, widowed, always brought homemade peach cobbler whenever I repaired her air conditioner. People like her trusted smiling faces. They believed handshakes still meant something. Suddenly, staying quiet did not feel noble. It felt irresponsible. On my way home, I stopped at Walmart, not because I needed groceries, because I had forgotten my reading glasses at Andre's office. I wandered into the pharmacy section and stood there looking at rows of magnifying readers. A young employee walked over. "Need any help, sir?" "I need eyes that are 20 years younger." He laughed. "Sorry, we're out of those." "So everybody keeps telling me." I tried on a stronger pair and picked up one of my bank statements. The numbers suddenly looked crystal clear. I shook my head. "Better?" the employee asked. "Yeah," I said, folding the statement. "Unfortunately." When I got back to my truck, I called Keisha. My daughter answered on the second ring. "Hey, Dad, you working?" "Just finished my shift." "You got a minute?" Her voice changed immediately. "What's wrong?" I told her everything. Not every detail, just enough. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, there was a long silence. Finally, she said, "Dad." "Yeah, I'm sorry." "So am I." Then she added something I would never forget. "Do not confuse being kind with being obligated to stay hurt." I sat there holding the phone, watching people push shopping carts across the parking lot. For the first time since Thursday night, my anger was not the strongest feeling anymore. Clarity was. That evening, Andre called again. "I've reviewed everything." And the signature was not the biggest surprise. It wasn't? No. He took a slow breath. Leon, whoever prepared those documents, expected nobody would ever look closely. I looked down at the papers spread across my kitchen table. The hotel picture, the bank records, the forged signature, one lie leading neatly into another. I whispered to myself, that was not just betrayal. I rested my hand on the folder. That was permission she never had. Saturday afternoon arrived gray and damp, the kind of Missouri day that settles into your joints before the rain ever starts. I stood in my bedroom trying to tie a necktie I had not worn in almost a year. The knot looked crooked. I untied it and started over. By the third try, my right knee was barking from standing too long, so I sat on the edge of the bed and finished it there. Funny how getting older changes your victories. At 30, tying a tie was not something you even noticed. At 58, it felt like one more thing your body negotiated instead of simply doing. A knock came at the front door. It was Keisha. She stepped inside carrying 2 cups of coffee. She looked me over. "You clean up pretty well, Dad. I feel like I'm headed to my own funeral." She smiled, but only for a second. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out my blood pressure monitor. "You checked it?" I sighed. "I knew bringing you into this meant I would lose every argument." She wrapped the cuff around my arm anyway. After a moment, she looked at the numbers. "I've seen worse." "That is not exactly comforting." "It'll do." She squeezed my shoulder. "You do not have to prove you're the toughest man in the room today." "I know. You just have to tell the truth." That was easier said than done, because the truth was not only embarrassing, it was personal. By 1:30, we pulled into the parking lot of the Knights of Columbus Hall. Pickup trucks lined one side. Church ladies carried slow cookers through the front doors. A volunteer was setting out lemonade in plastic pitchers. A banner stretched across the stage. Price Community Living Project, helping seniors build better futures. I stared at it longer than I should have. Keisha noticed. "You okay?" I nodded. "No." Inside, the room looked exactly like 100 other community events I had attended over the years. Metal folding chairs, bad coffee, store-bought cookies on paper plates, retired teachers, veterans in baseball caps, widows greeting each other by first name. People like me. People who still believed a handshake meant something. For one brief moment, I almost turned around and left. My knee hurt. My stomach felt hollow. I did not want my private humiliation becoming public entertainment. Then I spotted Mrs. Odessa Bell. She was standing near the front with her checkbook already open. 76 years old and still the best peach cobbler in Greene County. She smiled when she saw me. "Leon, I did not know you were coming." "Neither did I." She laughed. "You here to invest too?" That sentence settled everything inside me. "No," I said quietly. "I'm here to ask a few questions." The program started 5 minutes later. Darnell walked onto the stage wearing a navy blazer and a smile I had trusted for nearly 2 decades. "If you did not know him, you would probably like him," he spoke confidently. Talked about community, about dignity, about helping retirees downsize, about creating passive income. Every sentence sounded polished. Every story sounded rehearsed. Then he spotted me. Just for a second, his smile tightened. He recovered quickly. Too quickly. He kept talking. I looked toward the back of the room. Andre was there exactly as planned, not beside me, not making a scene, just sitting quietly with a notebook in his lap. Monica sat 2 rows away. Valerie was near the front. She looked exhausted. She kept glancing toward Darnell as though waiting for instructions. That bothered me more than I expected. She was not acting like someone in love. She looked like someone trying very hard not to panic. After 20 minutes, Darnell finished his presentation. "Any questions?" Nobody moved. I slowly stood. Every eye in the room turned toward me. Darnell smiled. "Leon, did not expect to see you." "I imagine not." He folded his hands. "What can I answer for you?" I took a slow breath. Andre, exactly like Andre had advised. "You recognize this?" Darnell looked, only for a second. Then he looked away. "I do not know what that is." "No?" I held the paper steady. "It appears to have my signature on it." Murmurs spread through the room. Mrs. Bell slowly closed her checkbook. An older man in a Marine Corps cap folded his arms. Nobody interrupted. Nobody had to. I asked my third question, the most important one. "If your program is helping older people," I said, pausing, "why does it begin with hiding where the money goes?" Silence. Long enough to hear someone cough in the back. Valerie suddenly stood up. "Leon, stop." Her voice shook. "This is not the place." I looked at her. When was the right place? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Darnell stepped forward. "This man is upset because of private family problems." "No," I answered calmly. I'm upset because trust is not a business model. A woman near the front quietly picked up her purse, then another. Someone whispered, I think we're leaving. Darnell's confidence began slipping. He tried smiling again, tried joking. Seems helping old people is more trouble than it's worth anyway. He said it casually, almost under his breath, but the microphone was still on. Every speaker in the hall carried his words. Helping old people is more trouble than it's worth. The room froze. Mrs. Bell stared at him. The Marine veteran slowly stood. Then another couple walked toward the exit. Nobody argued, nobody shouted. People simply stopped believing him, one by one, quietly. It was somehow more devastating than any angry crowd. Valerie turned toward Darnell. You told me. She stopped, because she finally saw what everyone else had just seen. The charm, the performance, the complete lack of respect underneath it. She had not been special. She had simply been useful. A deputy sheriff walked through the entrance a minute later. He was not there because of me. Monica had already filed paperwork weeks earlier, connected to another complaint involving Darnell's business. The deputy quietly asked Darnell if they could speak outside. Darnell tried laughing. Nobody laughed with him. As the room emptied, Andre walked over. He leaned close enough that only I could hear. You handled that exactly right. I do not feel like I won. You were not trying to. Outside, the rain had finally started. A slow, cold drizzle. Valerie caught up to me near the parking lot. Leon. I stopped. She looked smaller somehow, older. I'm sorry. For a moment, I wanted to believe her. 17 years is a long time. You do not throw that away without hoping there is one sentence that can still fix everything. Before I could answer, Keisha hurried toward us. Dad! She held out Valerie's phone. She left it on her chair. The screen lit up. One new message. From Darnell. Cry if you have to. He'll believe it. Nobody spoke. Not me. Not Keisha. Not Valerie. The rain. I'm finally listening. To what? To what you've been showing me for months. I got into my truck and drove away. The house felt different that evening. Not empty, just unfamiliar. I opened the refrigerator and realized I had no idea what people cooked for one. I was not helpless. I had lived alone before. But routine is a funny thing. You do not notice how much of your life belongs to habit until the habit disappears. I burned grilled cheese twice. Then I gave up and ate tomato soup straight from the saucepan. Around 9, I walked into the bathroom. A blue plastic hair clip was sitting behind the faucet. I picked it up. For one foolish second, I almost smiled. I remembered teasing Valerie years ago because she somehow owned 50 hair clips, but could never find one. I stood there holding it. Then I quietly dropped it into the trash. Not because I hated her, because I could not keep living inside yesterday. That night I slept in the recliner again. My back. You probably saved some folks Saturday. I was not trying to be a hero. No, she smiled. You were trying to be honest. There was a difference. Before she left, she handed me a small envelope. Inside was a $20 Bass Pro Shops gift card. I laughed. What's this for? So you'll stop looking so serious. I do not fish. I know. She winked. Buy socks. That was the first genuine laugh I had had in days. By Wednesday, apparently half of Springfield had heard about the fundraiser. Not because of Facebook, because of church ladies. Mrs. Bell called me after lunch. You know Betty Simmons? I think so. Well, Betty told Nancy. Nancy told Ruth. Ruth told the quilting club. I could not help smiling. So Darnell is famous? Oh, honey, she chuckled. Only in the worst possible way. Small towns do not need newspapers. They have retired women with telephones. That Friday, Valerie called. I'd like to talk. I almost said no. Instead, I asked, where? Panera. Sunshine Street. The next morning, she was already sitting by the window when I arrived. She looked tired, older somehow, not because of wrinkles, because pretending had finally exhausted her. She wrapped both hands around a cup of coffee. I do not expect forgiveness. I sat across from her. Good. She nodded slowly. I've practiced this conversation all week. Then do not give me the rehearsed version. She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, something had changed. I was scared. Of what? Getting older. I waited. She continued. You retired. Your life slowed down. I looked at us and wondered. She stopped. If that was all there was, I did not interrupt. Darnell made me feel exciting again. She shook her head. Not loved, just noticed. There was a long silence. Finally, she whispered, and then everything got bigger than I could control. I looked out the window. People carried shopping bags through the parking lot. A grandfather was helping his little granddaughter climb into a pickup truck. Life kept moving no matter what happened to mine. I looked back at Valerie. I believe you. She blinked. You do? I believe you were scared. Another pause. Then I said, I was scared too. She looked surprised. I lost my first wife. I built walls after that. I thought paying the bills, fixing the house, making sure we were comfortable meant I was showing love. I smiled sadly. Maybe I should have said the words more often. Her eyes filled with tears. So this is my fault? I shook my head. No. I leaned forward. I was not the perfect husband, but I never stopped being your husband. She covered her mouth. I know. I know that now. We sat there quietly for a while. Finally, she whispered, Can we fix this? I answered honestly, No. She looked down. I do not think either of us would ever stop wondering. She nodded, slowly, painfully. Then she asked the hardest question. Do you hate me? I thought about it longer than she probably expected. No. I paused. I hate what happened. I hate what we became. But I do not hate you. She cried quietly into a napkin. When we stood to leave, she reached for my hand. I gently stepped back. Not cruelly, just clearly. Some doors do not slam shut. They simply stop opening. As I walked across the parking lot, my phone rang. Andre. Leon. What's happened? Darnell filed a complaint. I stopped beside my truck. What kind of complaint? He's claiming you publicly defamed him. I closed my eyes. Of course he did. Andre did not sound worried. He will not get far. You sure? I've reviewed every witness statement. You never accused him of anything that was not supported by public records. I let out a slow breath. Then Andre added one more sentence. He's desperate now. Desperate people usually make their biggest mistakes. I looked across the parking lot one last time. Valerie was still standing outside Panera, watching me leave. For years, I thought the hardest thing I would ever do would be catching my wife with another man. I was wrong. The hardest part was accepting that loving someone did not mean I had to keep caring for what they broke. 3 months later, I found myself sitting in a conference room instead of a courtroom. To be honest, I preferred it that way. Real life does not usually end with dramatic speeches and judges pounding gavels. Most endings happen around plain tables under fluorescent lights with stacks of paperwork and people who are simply tired. Andre sat beside me. Across the table was Valerie with her attorney. She looked different. Not broken, not glamorous, just worn out. There comes a point when lying becomes harder than telling the truth. I think she had finally reached that point. The mediator slid one document across the table. Mrs. Turner, we need to clarify one issue. Valerie looked down. The investment acknowledgement. Another long silence. Then she quietly said the words I had been waiting months to hear. I signed his name. Nobody gasped. Nobody looked shocked. The room had moved beyond surprises. The mediator simply nodded and made another note. Were you authorized to do that? No. Did Mr. Turner know? No. Did anyone pressure you? Valerie hesitated. For a second, I wondered if she would blame Darnell. Instead, she shook her head. No, I made that decision. I closed my eyes. Not because I enjoyed hearing it, because the truth, even painful truth, finally has weight you can stand on. For weeks, I had been living inside questions. Now I finally had answers. Not good ones, just honest ones. The mediation lasted another 2 hours. The attorneys worked through bank records, property issues, retirement accounts, and repayment plans. I did not get every dollar back. That is not how life works. Some money was gone. Some would eventually be recovered. Some was not worth chasing because the legal fees would cost more than the loss itself. Andre whispered, "Sometimes winning means knowing when to stop paying for yesterday." He was right. Before we left, Valerie stopped beside me in the hallway. "I do not expect you to forgive me." I looked at her. "I've already forgiven enough." She frowned. "I do not understand." "I forgive you because I do not want to carry this forever." I paused. "But forgiveness does not mean I have to trust you again." She nodded slowly. "I guess that's fair." Then she surprised me. "I'm sorry I made you feel old." I smiled a little. "You did not." "What?" "My knees did that all by themselves." For the first time in months, we both laughed. It lasted maybe 2 seconds. But it was real. Then we walked in different directions. As for Darnell, Justice has a funny sense of humor. Nobody arrested him in handcuffs while television cameras rolled. Life does not usually work that way. Instead, people simply stopped believing him. The fundraiser collapsed. Several potential investors withdrew. The complaints against his business kept growing. One Saturday morning, I drove past the small used car lot where he had parked his silver Buick with a for sale sign in the windshield. The same Buick I had watched outside the hotel. A week later, it was still sitting there. The following week, still there. Mrs. Bell called me one afternoon. "Guess what?" "I'm afraid to ask." "Nobody is buying Darnell's car." I laughed. "That's too bad." "Oh, honey." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I may have mentioned at Bible study that folks should check both the transmission and the owner." I nearly spilled my coffee. "You said that?" "No." She giggled. "I said the owner was the expensive part." Small town justice. It travels by casserole and telephone. Not long after the divorce became final, I sold the house. Some people thought Valerie forced me to. That was not true. I chose to. The place had too many stairs, too many empty rooms, too many memories that belonged to people I was not anymore. I bought a smaller ranch house in Republic. One floor, no steep staircase, a garage big enough for my old tools. I even set up a little workbench. Word got around that I still knew my way around an air conditioner. Before long, neighbors started stopping by. "Leon, think you could look at my condenser? My heater is making a funny noise." I did not go back into business. I just helped when I felt like it. It gave me something retirement never had: purpose. One Saturday morning, Keisha came over carrying 2 hanging flower baskets. "I figured your porch needed some color." She looked around. "I like this place." "So do my knees." She laughed. "I noticed." We spent the afternoon planting flowers. Before she left, she looked at the rocking chair beside mine. "Expecting company?" I looked at the empty chair. "No," I smiled, "but I like having it there." For years, that empty chair would have meant someone was missing. Now it simply meant there was room if the right person ever came along. There is a difference. Every evening, I started a new routine. Decaf coffee, the porch. 10 quiet minutes before sunset, no television, no phone, just birds settling into the trees and the distant sound of traffic from Highway 60. One evening, my phone buzzed with a number I did not recognize. I looked at it, let it ring. Then I turned the phone face down. Some conversations no longer deserved my attention. That felt better than answering. People sometimes ask whether revenge made me happy. The truth is, revenge was not what healed me. The paperwork did not heal me. The divorce did not heal me. Watching Darnell lose his reputation did not heal me either. What healed me was finally drawing a line I should have drawn much sooner. At 58, I learned something nobody tells you when you are young. You spend the first half of your life learning how to trust people. You spend the second half learning that peace is sometimes worth more than another chance. If Valerie had apologized sooner, maybe things would have been different. Maybe not. I will never know. Honestly, I do not need to anymore. The chair beside mine is still empty most evenings, but it does not feel lonely. It feels peaceful. And after everything that happened, peace turned out to be worth more than being right.